You are listening to the Bright Life Podcast, all about ways to stay inspired, chase your dreams, and find more gratitude in the highs and lows of the journey. I'm your host, Jessica Johnson. I'm a business owner, a part-time digital nomad, a self-growth junkie, a believer in other big-hearted women, and am all about sharing tips, tricks, lessons learned, and encouragement so we can all live our biggest, brightest lives. You ready? Let's do this. Hi, love. Welcome to today's episode. I'm just imagining that we are at a coffee shop. We've just gotten the best, warmest little coffee, and we're going to sit down and talk about you and your dreams and what you're thinking of putting into the world. Maybe you want to start a business or write a book, launch a podcast, or come up with some other idea that's on your heart. And maybe you're feeling all the feels because you are concerned about what people will think. You're afraid of whether or not you'll be able to be successful and make ends meet. And so you're just in the middle of all of it. If that resonates, I have so been there. And when I was thinking about you and what I felt like I wanted to share with you this week, it was really around this concept that I didn't learn until further on in my entrepreneurial journey, but I feel like would be so helpful for people to hear at the beginning before they ever take that scary step to do the thing that's on their heart. And that is this idea that you can either do it now scared, or you can do it a year from now scared. The difference won't be the amount of fear that you have. The difference will be how long you will hold back and stand waiting to live the life of your dreams. I used to have this feeling that fear would go away, like I was waiting to take the step to start my business or launch the podcast once I felt less afraid. And once I got into business and started the podcast, I realized my fear never really lessened until I did the thing. Like my fear would have been there whether I started the business that year, that day, whether I did it 10 years from then. It's not that the fear ever really goes away. So if you're sitting and waiting for, the fear to disappear or to feel less intimidated by this thing you want to do, I think that's actually the wrong approach. The fear is never going to go away. It's really just how much time do you want to spend letting the fear stop you from the life that you want to live. Does that make sense? So I have a few ideas around that to hopefully give you some reframes and shift your perspective today. And then let me know what you think. You can find me on Instagram at Hi Jessica Johnson, and would love to continue this conversation over there. So the first thing that I think is helpful to think about is that fear is not this stop sign. It's really just this actually very predictable response by your nervous system that is just your body trying to keep you safe and regulated. So your nervous system's job is to keep everything in balance, everything in homeostasis, and to make sure that you're safe and you're protected. Back in the day, fear would have meant danger. Fear would have meant you maybe were being chased by a lion. You were at risk of being left alone and isolated from a tribe where you couldn't be able to get warmth or food or protection. And so it's very normal if you are reaching for something new in your life or you're putting yourself out there in some way for this evolutionary mechanism to kick in and to say, whoa, are we safe? This feels a little bit different than our normal day-to-day here. What's going on? What are you doing? And so it's almost so predictable. If you think about it like that, it's come on, come up with some new tricks, nervous system. I'm good here. This is so caveman era, right? But it's really just thinking of that as such a natural response that you can almost come to expect of, oh, okay, of course, my body is just trying to keep me safe. It's trying to protect me from the unknown, from doing something on my own, from something that could be really good for me, but feels new and feels unfamiliar, and therefore puts my body a little bit out of whack, a little bit into that risky territory. And so, of course, fear is going to come in to try and calm me back down and bring me back into my normal day-to-day. If you can look at it like that, it becomes a lot easier to just look at fear through this lens of love and gentleness and patience, and almost just Like, of course you're here. That makes sense. I'm doing something new. Of course, my body's going to feel a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit nervous, and want to bring me back to my regular routine where it's used to things. The thing is, if your regular routine isn't the life you really want to live, then you're going to have to experience some of that fear and move forward anyway. All right. So I think that's kind of the first concept is like, fear is just this predictable response from your body trying to keep you safe. It's not trying to hurt you. It's not trying to hold you back. It's not trying to make you lose sleep and feel horrible at night. It's really just trying to make sure you're good and make sure you're getting back to normal. But you kind of have to move through it if you do know that you want your new normal to be different. The second thing I've really come to realize is that fearlessness is not a personality trait, it's more of a practice. So sometimes I'll have people leave comments on my Instagram or DM me and say things like, wow, you must never get nervous. And I'm like, oh my gosh, do you know me? Like, do you know how I came out into this earth? I have always been like the most nervous little creature. You know, when I was little, I would check around my room every night for spiders before bed. And I'd always make my little sister go do everything first to make sure it was safe. I definitely have caution a little bit more built into my personality, but fearlessness has become something that I haven't really looked for as I used to as this personality trait and felt that I needed it to be part of my personality. I've looked at it as a practice I can cultivate. So I just know that whenever I'm starting something new, I'm going to feel fear. I know that whenever I'm traveling somewhere I've never been, I'm going to feel fear around how do I navigate the transportation and the language and just all the different cultural things. Like, that's not really something that I expect anymore to feel, like totally comfortable with. I'm just like, okay, fearlessness is something that I practice anyway. Fearlessness is something that I do, not something that I wait to become. So I want to offer that to you as well, where if you've ever sat on the sidelines or, you're thinking of that idea and you're saying, Jess, like, I wish I could do it, but I'm just not that brave. I wish I could do it, but I'm not really that fearless of a person. You don't need to be a fearless person to go for what you really want. You just have to practice fearlessness. You just have to show up and do the scary thing with your hands shaken and the butterflies in your stomach. But what you'll do is you'll start to realize that in that practice, you become a lot more comfortable with fearlessness becoming more of a personality trait. And it's not even a way you necessarily need to view yourself, but it's just a way that you'll live your life more and more because you see the reward that's on the other side. And that's the third piece that I want to talk about, is about that reward that's on the other side. So the first one is just remembering that the fear never really goes away. So you can do it now scared, you can do it 5 years from now scared, but you're going to be probably scared either way for something that really matters to you. So how long do you want to give up on that dream in the hopes that fear goes away, which it probably won't? And then the second thing is that fearlessness is not a personality trait. It's a practice. It's just something you have to cultivate in your life, whether or not you feel like you were naturally born with that kind of trait. And then the third thing is the sooner you take the risk, the sooner you get the reward. So I was so grateful that I started when I did in business because I did it scared. I didn't have it all mapped out. I mean, I did the best I could, but let me tell you, I changed a lot around once I got actually into it. But a year into my business, I was so grateful that I started when I did because I learned so much in that year. There were so many lessons. There was so much, brutal growth and just ups and downs and things that I really had to navigate. But when I looked back on that year, I was like so thankful that I had a whole year of that and I didn't have to then be at the starting line still waiting and going through all that then, like I was glad it was done already and I could get to where I wanted to go that much faster because I started that much sooner. I have a friend, Kim Argett-Singer, who has an incredible podcast, and you should go check her out on Instagram if you haven't already. But, she talks about is doing what you fear worth what's on the other side. So there's going to be things in business and in creating the life of our dreams where we don't necessarily want to do those things. We might be afraid of those things, but it's worth what's on the other side. Maybe putting your face on social media is scary, but it's worth getting your message out there or getting those first few clients. Maybe switching careers is scary, is uncomfortable, but it's worth creating more freedom. It's worth creating the life you desire. It's worth doing something you love. So that's another way to think about it when it comes to this reward is facing your fear, is taking that scary step worth what's on the other side. Because you can stay without risk, you can stay comfortable, but you don't get the reward. And so I think we almost have this false idea of comfort where it seems comfortable to stay in a life we've outgrown, but I don't know about you, but there's almost nothing more uncomfortable than a life we've outgrown, right? It's this false illusion of comfort. And so just thinking through, is there anything that is worth it to you to take that step? To put yourself out there, to do the social media post, to sign up for the course, to get the mentor, things like that. What's on the other side of that? You have to look at the whole picture because you're not going through your fear. You're not facing your fear just for the sake of it. You're doing it for what's on the other side. It's almost like if you're investing, if you're putting your money into an investment, that's not the whole picture. The whole picture, the reason you're giving up some of your money now is for what it can become one day, whether it's buying a house, whether it's investing in the stock market. It's not that fun to give up your money today and see it pulled out of your bank account, but you do it knowing what it can become in 10 years or 30 years. And so the same thing with your fear. It's not that fun today to face the fear. That's not worth it on its own. But if it's worth it for what you can get out of it in 10 years, in 30 years, won't that be a different picture and a different story? And that's almost a more complete way of looking at things. So I just want to offer that to you because I know that you may be listening and you may have that thing that when we have these conversations that you're thinking of in the back of your mind and you're getting your nerve up around, but there's this fear holding you back and it's limiting you and it's causing you to play small or to shrink back or to stay waiting. And I just want to encourage you there that fear really isn't going to go away. So what's your game plan now? What's your game plan if that fear stays? Are you going to just stay with it or are you going to move forward regardless? Are you going to move forward and take a step towards what you really, really want? Because you may have to move through fear to do it. But as the poet Robert Frost says, the best way out is always through. And so that's the message for this week. And again, I'd love to hear what's on your mind, what you're thinking about when you listen to this. So shoot me a DM at Hi Jessica Johnson on Instagram. And I am cheering for you. I'm so here for whatever you want to put into the world. I believe in you, and I'm grateful you spent time with me this week. And so I hope this really deeply serves you. Thank you so much for listening in. If this episode resonated with you, I have something you are going to love. Check out brightlifepodcast.com where you can download a free Bright Life Biz Starter Kit full of the steps that helped me go from a 9-to-5 to starting a business, creating more freedom, and finding fulfillment as my own boss. I hope it supports and inspires you further. Thank you so much for being here, and I will chat with you again. Thank you so much for listening in. If this episode resonated with you, I have something you are going to love. Check out brightlifepodcast.com where you can download a free Bright Life Biz Starter Kit full of the steps that helped me go from a 9-to-5 to starting a business, creating more freedom, and finding fulfillment as my own boss. I hope it supports and inspires you further. Thank you so much for being here, and I will chat with you again next week.